12,000 years ago. Two gods, Apollo and Sylvia, once fought and defeated the Angel of Darkness together. But after the battle, the two gods were separated. Apollo swore he would find a way to reunite with Sylvia once more. And this is Amada. He was captivated by the movie about the two ancient gods, because it taught him not to simply leave everything to fate. The theater owner told him he could leave after finishing the cleanup. He would take care of the rest. As Amada tittied up the theater, he was surprised to find a girl there. She had been crying after watching the movie. Amada noticed she resembled the actress who played the goddess Sylvia in the film, but she claimed it was her first time seeing the movie, so she didn't know much. Amada tried to ask her name and learned she was Makono. Not wanting to seem any weirder, Amada thanked her for coming today. Makono unexpectedly asked to buy a DVD of the movie, but Amada regretfully explained it was a 10-year-old film and no longer in production. So Makono invited Amada for a walk, wanting to ask him a few things about the movie. She used a line from the goddess in the film, which intrigued Amada. He suddenly felt his body about to float, so he asked her to wait a few minutes. Amada quickly ran back to his room and strapped more weights to his legs to keep himself from floating away. Years ago, he'd lost someone important, and now he was determined not to let that happen again. The scene then shifts to a girls' academy. This academy trains female warriors to fight against a type of monster that has recently appeared. The female students learn to combine, and here, both teachers and students consider physical contact or combat merging with men taboo. Amada and Makono were now on a ferry, heading out. Makono noticed that monsters had been attacking more frequently lately. The more humans resisted, the more numerous they became. Because of these monsters, human daily life had significantly decreased compared to before. Amada was then suddenly bitten on the arm by a creature that looked like Makono's hair tie. She explained it was her cat. She found it by chance when it was being hunted by monsters. We then meet the other half of the academy. This side is for male students, far from the peaceful, idyllic life of the female students. Male students here have to study and train like soldiers. They practice shooting, crawling through mud, and are penalized for poor performance. Some regretted choosing this place, realizing they wouldn't interact with any girls. According to Makono, only those chosen by battle armor and granted special abilities could attend this academy. Makono asked Amada if he wanted to pilot battle armor and fight, and he admitted he once had. But realistically, someone like him would never be chosen. He thought he was useless, so Makono reassured him it was fine, as she felt useless too. Amada felt himself about to float again, so he excused himself to add more weights to his shoes. But just as he left, many flying machines appeared in the sky, heading their way. As soon as he finished adjusting his shoes, Amada felt a strong tremor outside and quickly ran out to see what was happening. Discovering an enemy attack. The enemies of humanity here are unmanned machines that specialize in attacking and abducting people, and their targets are mostly women. Just as Amada found Makono, she was targeted by one, but allied battle armor was quickly dispatched to confront them. And these battle armors require more than one person to operate. The teachers from both the male and female academies were summoned. Both believed the other students were undisciplined and lacked seriousness, but the appearance of a dangerous enemy forced them to stop arguing. They identified the new enemy as a humanoid machine with a pilot inside. This new enemy piloted their robot with exceptional skill, thoroughly defeating the three male students operating the battle armor. The commander had no choice but to deploy the female students' battle armor simultaneously. Despite it being forbidden, the female unit descended from above, firing their weapons and temporarily repelling the enemy. But the two teachers still adamantly refused to let male and female students combine. The female unit then launched a barrage of missiles, but the enemy continuously dodged them. He then sent the missiles back at the students, causing the male and female students to start bickering again. But as the two sides argued, the enemy created a whirlwind. The whirlwind swept the two battle armors into the sky and flung them away. Amada saw a battle armor knock a statue towards Makono, so he immediately ran to protect her, even if it meant getting hurt. The enemy then flew down, grabbed the female battle armor's leg, spun it around a few times, and hurled it towards the male battle armor. The enemy was about to swing its axe to finish off both battle armors, when it suddenly smelled something strange nearby. The smell was coming from Makono and Amada. It then suddenly targeted both of them. The two battle armors tried to stop it, but were blasted back, causing both to unexpectedly separate. Some students were unexpectedly sent back to the command room. Amada was forced to remove all the weights from his leather shoes to activate his power and escape the rubble. He then flew into the sky with Makono, and immediately after, an aircraft was summoned. Amada and Makono were somehow teleported into the cockpit. A voice urged Amada to proceed. He shouted the forbidden name, Aquarian, causing the aircraft to suddenly merge with the remaining students below. After the merging process, a battle armor, considered an evolution of ordinary battle armors, was born. Although in evolved form, this was a product born from taboo. The male student who was pulled and contacted them, asking who Amada was and why he was with Makono. He then demanded that command regain control, but they could do almost nothing as the battle armor wasn't responding to the command room. The enemy refused to accept that their foe was so weak, constantly yelling at Amada to fight. Unaccustomed to the movement, Amada made the robot stumble and fall, and Makono asked Amada to run with her, as they were both useless. Suddenly, three enemies appeared to restrain and retrieve the red-haired enemy. He refused to be called back by his superiors in the middle of a battle and struggled to resist. The blue-haired female student decided to teach Amada how to control the battle armor. He extended a massive hand straight towards one of the enemies. the red-haired enemy decided to defy orders and stay to fight. He used parts from other machines to compensate for himself. Makono still tried to persuade Amada to give up fighting, which annoyed the other female and male students due to her tearfulness. But Amada understood that Makono must be afraid that something terrible would happen. The male student then unexpectedly activated an ability, allowing the group in command room to see a massive funeral scene across the entire city. This was the male student's precognitive ability to foresee misfortune, and the cause of the misfortune they saw was Makono being forced to marry the red-haired enemy. He continuously charged and attacked, knocking down Amada's battle armor. He then launched arc-shaped projectiles to pin Amada to the ground. The male student blamed Amada for summoning this useless thing and involving Makono. Amada admitted he was at fault. He possessed an ability that made him float every time he got excited. Many people hated him just for this ability. He decided to abandon this power to live normally, but when he saw Makono in danger, he risked using it again. And now, his problems were dragging many others into danger with him. As Amada felt guilty, Makono spoke up to comfort him. She thought she was the one at fault for saying things that made him lose his fighting spirit. She admitted she was weak and only knew how to cry. But Amada was still ready to protect her. With a surge of newfound confidence, Amada unexpectedly rallied and fought back against the red-haired enemy. He then sent the red-haired enemy flying into the sky. The two then flew out of Earth and propelled the red-haired enemy into an asteroid. But he wasn't destroyed and wanted to keep fighting, when his superior called and summoned a portal to pull him back. But Amada then became exhausted, causing the battle armor to separate. As they fell to the ground, the commander ordered the male student to bring both Amada and Makono back to base. It was there we learned the male student was Kan, and the female student was Jessica. The red-haired enemy had also returned to his base. We learned his name was Kagura, and he confidently believed he had found something he needed to risk his life to obtain. The enemy commander then assigned the blonde-haired Jin Dai the task of investigating the Allied's strategy further. Simultaneously, Jin also had to find a way to rein in Kagura because he had unexpectedly caused an angel to awaken among the Allied forces. Amada then woke up, startled, remembering that Makono had been taken away. But Kan was there to give him a tour of the facility. He explained this was the Neo Deva Academy. Here, chosen individuals like them would be trained to become pilots of battle armors called Aquarian. Their mission was to destroy the enemies known as abductors whenever they attacked. Kan brought Amada to class so he could get used to being stared at, because he was the only civilian here who had piloted an Aquarian, and even combined with someone of the opposite sex. But the Academy's high-ranking officials were now discussing him, carefully observing both Amada and Makono. Kan also stated that male-female fusion was taboo, which was why the school was divided into two halves. Kan then wanted to know the relationship between Amada and Makono. Amada thought Kan was engaged to Makono, but he clarified that Makono was his younger sister. Makono had been very timid since childhood, despite being born into a prestigious family, because she lacked any power. And Makono was so afraid of the abductors that she wouldn't leave the house without him. But Amada believed Makono was trying to change herself. Kan didn't believe Amada because he knew almost nothing about Makono. Amada admitted Kan was right and wanted to reconcile with him. But Kan wouldn't accept him, so their teacher and captain, Fudo, had to stop them. Fudo announced they would test Amada this afternoon to see if they should keep him. They indeed intended to see if Amada could become a pilot. But what he would pilot wouldn't be an Aquaria, but an Aquarian. A battle armor for someone who had committed such a taboo. Amada was then taken for testing. They discovered his ability to defy gravity whenever he felt excited. But they still believed Amada had another ability besides anti-gravity. However, the commander believed having an Aquarian in their ranks was essential to combat the current enemy. But Fudo objected, arguing that this would cause the disaster from before to happen again. Amada was then brought to a machine. This machine would scan Amada's memories. During the scan, Amada relived his painful memories and his misfortune of carrying this power. Suddenly, the machine malfunctioned, halting the scan. Meanwhile, Jessica was quite popular at school after merging with both Amada and Kan. Makono believed she would soon leave as people realized she had no power. But then Jessica's class president, Mix, stood up and claimed Jessica had been defiled, even if by someone as outstanding as Kan. She then turned to ask Makono about Kan's dark pleasures. But Makono hadn't lived with Kan for a long time, and she didn't belong in this school because she was useless. As Amada went for a walk, he suddenly heard music playing somewhere. He then unexpectedly fell into a hole and encountered someone below. That was Andy, and he was trying to dig a tunnel to get to the other side of the wall, to the girls' area. He had the ability to create weak points in anything, and by exploiting weak points in the earth, he had dug this far. Amada decided to help Andy because he also wanted to go to the other side to see Makono again. After some digging, Amada and Andy made it to the other side of the wall and found Makono there. Due to a clear view, Amada lost control of his ability, accidentally thrusting his head into Makono's skirt and sending her flying into the sky. Amada then had to regain control to descend to the ground, but Makono called him a pervert and ran off. Both were then spotted by guards on the wall, so Andy quickly pulled Amada to flee. A training exercise was held. Amada would have to merge with Annie and Kan to control an Aquarian in front of the entire school. Amada now wanted to find a way to apologize to Makono for what happened last night. Amada began the simulation, but the merging process of the three encountered some glitches because Amada wasn't focused enough to merge. But Annie told him that the girls were also watching their performance, so Amada decided to use this opportunity to apologize to Makono. His spirit soared, allowing all three to merge. Amada then used his ability to make the robot fly high, then dive down to deliver a powerful blow to the ground. But he then left the robot in a bowing position to apologize to Makono. Makono understood Amada's intention, but the simulation program had an error, so the exercise had to be stopped. The female student's teacher came to see Fudo. The teacher knew that Fudo had once tried to use forbidden combination 9 years ago, and now, seeing his body was enough to understand the consequences of that taboo. Makono decided to leave the school. She thought she might not see Amada again from now on. As she was about to leave, she met Jessica. Jessica asked Makono if she was going to abandon Amada, but Makono seemed unwilling to discuss the matter. Amada, on the other side of the wall, still missed Makono, but Annie was horrified that the hole he and Amada had painstakingly dug had been filled in by someone. Amada then suddenly heard the music from last night again, and Annie explained it belonged to Shrade, the student considered the best in the academy. This person had never attended a training session and had never been in battle, so most of the rumors were spread by the girls. Annie then took Amada to meet Shrade. Shrade recognized Amada as the one who performed at yesterday's drill. But just then, Kan arrived to confront Amada about his actions during yesterday's drill. Shrade had to intervene to stop Kan. He just played a melody that made Kan collapse. And he explained that Shrade could control others' emotions with music. And Shrade knew Kan was quite distraught worrying about his sister. Kan and Shrade were about to fight when Shrade noticed something was happening. Immediately after, an abductor attack warning was issued. The location was right next to the academy, so Amada's trio was deployed for battle. Amada was still confused about why he was chosen when Kan pulled him along. The three quickly took off, and Kan still couldn't believe Command would send him to battle with a rookie. The commander believed Aquarian's power from Amada was essential in the upcoming battles, because from now on, they would face even stronger enemies. The three quickly spotted the enemy, but Kagura was not present, so they quickly transformed to swiftly deal with these low-level abductors. But the three were quickly surrounded by the abductors. Kan had to make the robot charge forward to open an escape route, but they suddenly fired a shot directly at their escape path, making the three realize that this organized fighting style must have someone behind it, controlling these enemies. Amada's group was quickly tied up and restrained by the abductors. Fudo requested the commander replace Shrade in the battle, but Shrade decided to give Kan a hand by playing a piece of music. This melody was then transmitted to Kan, helping him realize the controller was directly above. Kan launched a barrage of fire, but Jin quickly noticed and blocked the missiles. Just then, the ship Makono was using to leave suddenly turned back. A man then brought Makono back to the command room, and everyone quickly recognized him as General Commander Fudo. Fudo requested to replace Annie and put Makono in his place. She refused, believing she was useless and couldn't help. But Fudo showed Makono how Amada and Kan were doing their best to protect her. They would rather suffer themselves than have her experience it. Makono didn't want to keep hiding behind Amada and Kan, so she decided to ask Fudo to let her go into battle. Amada's group's robots had also separated by then. Fudo approved Makono's request to enter battle and quickly teleported Makono to replace Andy. She asked Amada to merge, so he quickly complied, transforming into the Aquarian form. Jin noticed the robot that had defeated Kagura had entered battle, so he decided to test its combat capabilities to report back. Makono then expressed her feelings to convince Kan to let her fight. She then encouraged Amada, causing him to discover Aquarian's heart was beating strongly. He then made the robot unleash a technique that extended its arm infinitely. The arm then flew up and targeted Jin. He tried to run, but the arm pursued and punched him. However, he was also pushed around the earth once before breaking in half and actually escaping. The arm then concluded by breaking the wall separating the male and female sides of the academy. Fudo announced that from now on, males and females would be allowed to interact, but romantic love between them would be forbidden. Immediately after, the commander also ran out to greet a helicopter landing at the academy. According to the commander, this young girl was the president of the entire Neo-Deva Academy. The president and Fudo had traveled everywhere to uncover the secret of Aquarian, and as they both discovered, the origin began when the two gods, Apollo and Sylvia, were separated. The power of the Aquarians gradually spiraled out of control, so this academy had to be established to seal its power and create the Aquaria-type robots as a replacement. But with the enemy growing stronger like this, they were forced to change the situation. The enemy commander summoned Jin. From the information Jin gathered, the commander noticed that the academy's robots seemed to have many different variations, and each form's combat style also differed significantly. Suddenly, Kagura unexpectedly acted on his own without the commander's orders, making the commander realize something had happened. Male and female students in the academy were now grouped together in classes. The teacher announced that their task for the day was to divide into mixed-gender groups to tour the city. After dividing into groups, the teacher handed each student a bracelet. Amada was an exception, so he didn't need to wear one. This bracelet would shock anyone who felt romantic emotions towards the opposite sex. And he was grouped with Mix and a frog plushie, and he was immediately shocked when he tried to look up her skirt. As the groups explored the city together, many couples were shocked. According to the president, this was a way for couples to awaken into Aquarian pilots, but without generating uncontrollable power that would cause disaster. 9 years ago, Fudo had lost 2 of his comrades, one of whom was the woman he loved, along with both his arms. The power of Aquarian resonates with the pilot's emotions inside it, amplifying those emotions to become combat energy. And the strongest human emotion is love. Therefore, The president only allowed male and female students to interact but forbade their emotions from developing into love. Kyoto was an example of what would happen if one crossed the line. But if emotions were kept at the boundary between friendship and love, like Amada's current state, pilots could perfectly control Aquarian. Kyoto decided to guide his students so they wouldn't make the same mistakes he did. And Futo's top priority was Amada, because he would automatically float if he got too excited. So Futo's task was to correct him with darts. The command room was now focusing its attention on 3 groups. First was Annie with Mix and this frog doll. Annie seemed very normal, but Mix isolated herself from the male students. So what they needed to worry about with Mix was that she wouldn't be able to merge with any male student, not that she would lose control. The second group they needed to watch was Shrade with Kan and a girl named Sazan. Shrade was said to be suffering from an illness that meant every time he entered battle, he faced death. The 3 were now put to a test. They had to drink water from the same glass. Kan and Shrade proactively drank first. Sazan, meanwhile, was amused to see them both drinking together like that. And finally, the last group, Amada's group. Futo didn't know how many darts he would need to keep Amada from getting excited. But Jessica now also wanted to try to compete with Mikono for Amada. So she approached and hugged his arm, causing him to float up. And Futo had to correct Amada again. Kagura personally descended to the ground to find Mikono. Jessica invited Amada bungee jumping for training. But Mikono started to get jealous because Jessica kept exciting Amada. She thought only she was special to Amada, so he had to run after her to explain. The two then watched the sunset from the tower and remembered the movie about the 2 gods. The artist nearby began to play music, setting the scene for them. Both began to open up, and their emotions started to reach the warning threshold. The president asked Futo to stop them, but he didn't have a clear shot. And right after, Kagura arrived and knocked Mikono unconscious. Futo realized this was a forbidden encounter. Kan quickly realized Mikono was in trouble and wanted to save his sister. The president announced the end of training, ordered all electric shock bracelets removed, and told all pilots to return and prepare. Shrade told Kan to go back with Sazan while he handled things up there. Amada tried to reclaim Mikono, but was kicked down by Kagura. He wondered why Amada had no sen. Amada now realized Kagura was the one who appeared in the omen Kan had shown them. He then charged forward, snatched Mikono back, and jumped off the tower. He used his power to fly up and away. Meanwhile, Shrade used the artist violin to confront Kagura. The abductor commander now didn't know who had opened the teleportation gate for Kagura. Suddenly, someone named Mikaz appeared. This individual was acquainted with the commander, and Mikaz had just reawakened after a long period of being sealed. Mikaz made some cryptic remarks about why he was helping Kagura, but the commander then ordered Jin to continue investigating Earth and retrieve Kagura's robot by force if necessary. Shrade had now forced Kagura to flee. Sazan then asked Futo why Shrade had never been allowed to fight, even though his stats were always top tier. Futo knew this couldn't be hidden any longer, so he told them Shrade had an amazing musical ability. But Shrade's music also carried a dark curse. It could make listeners become violent and kill others. The president personally recruited Shrade here, but piloting Aquarian caused Shrade to be overwhelmed by his own power. In other words, Shrade's power was too immense, and his ailing body couldn't withstand it when that power was amplified through Aquarian. Amada, now hiding Mikono, heard her say she wanted to meet and apologized to Kagura. Kagura was now tracking Mikono by scent. He then jumped into the river and pulled his robot out of the water. He then sniffed and lunged, grabbing Kan's machine. But the scent was wrong, so he pursued the other 2, Annie and Jessica. Amada had now woken Mikono and asked her about wanting to apologize to Kagura. She wasn't sure. She just felt a strange sense of familiarity with Kagura. Jessica now flew past where the 2 protagonists were hiding, causing Kagura to spot them. Kan was now injured, so Shrade decided to fight instead. Amada and Mikono ran, and Amada also began to realize he felt a slight familiarity with Kagura, and he knew he couldn't let Mikono fall into his hands. But just then, everyone discovered Shrade was in the battle machine. Futo then called Annie back and sent aircraft number 2 to Amada. He quickly seized the opportunity to help Mikono escape. Shrade requested to merge, but the president believed Shrade wouldn't survive after merging. But Shrade was ready to die. If he couldn't pilot Aquarian, Shrade believed he might as well be dead. The president then agreed to the fusion and appointed Shrade as the commander. Shrade then created a new form for the robot. He then created a whip and delivered a blow that sent Kagura flying straight into the river. Shrade then flew up and lunged, delivering a finishing blow to Kagura. He still wanted to fight, but Jin decided to retrieve the robot and pull Kagura back. Amada wanted to pursue, but Shrade had completely lost consciousness due to his power exceeding his body's endurance. A few days later, Shrade was lucky to have survived, but the president decided Shrade would be kept away from Aquarian from now on. And he now stood up, calling for male and female students to break down the emotional wall separating them. And he proposed changing seats in class, but Mix objected. However, the entire class agreed to Annie's seating change, so they would arrange seats by random lottery. In the end, Annie ended up sitting between the frog doll X and Mix. Amada, meanwhile, sat between Mikono and Jessica. Sitting closer to Amada, Jessica constantly tried to tease him to make him float. Kan and Shrade were now out on a trip to investigate a few things, and he was now bored sitting next to this frog doll. He started telling a story about the owner of this frog doll, that it once belonged to a girl. But this girl was isolated by the whole school and was so lonely that she disappeared. though sometimes people would unexpectedly hear the girl's voice coming from the doll. And he then even said he had seen the frog doll move. Jin had developed a combat simulation system to prepare for confrontation with humans. As Amada was on duty, he found Jessica waiting for him outside. Did she want to go back to the dorm with him? But when they arrived at the dorm, it was locked, so they had to find another way in. Amada realized Jessica was scared. The two then unexpectedly ran into the frog doll. It suddenly laughed and flew up to chase them, forcing Jessica and Amada to run away together. The two ran past Mikono, making her wonder why Amada and Jessica were together. The next morning, Jessica and Amada asked Andy about the doll incident, but Andy claimed it was a story he made up and wasn't real. Both refuted, saying they were chased by the frog doll last night. But Mix wanted to know what they were doing together last night, and Mikono also wanted to know, because last night, she saw them holding hands doing something. Before they had a chance to explain, the abductor attack alarm sounded again. And this time the enemy was no longer aiming to capture people, but to deliberately destroy the city. Kei, Amada, and Jessica were deployed for battle, with Jessica commanding this time. The three quickly transformed midair, and then landed in the city. Since this area was unpopulated, Jessica was allowed to use the buildings as shields. But Jin had predicted this in the simulation. He then fired many small orbs, using them to curve the projectiles straight towards Jessica's group. The president noted the situation was quite difficult, but Fudo seemed unconcerned. Amada's area was then hit, causing him damage. Jessica was flustered as she lacked experience controlling Aquarian. Her morale also plummeted, weakening Aquarian. Fudo then suddenly approached Mikono and said some cryptic words about how what one sees sometimes isn't necessarily the truth. Fudo then swapped them out. He requested Jessica to return and put the frog doll in her place. The frog doll was teleported to the cockpit and even bowed to Amada and Kan, which surprised both of them. The frog doll then explained the misunderstanding from last night to Mikono and apologized for scaring Amada and Jessica. They then merged again, and Amada was chosen as the commander. He transformed into the red robot form, and Jin acknowledged that Amada commanding was within his predictions. The transformation now revealed a little girl behind the frog doll. Her name was Ainoha, and it turned out she had the ability to turn invisible because she didn't want others to see her. Ainoha's ability helped Aquarian become invisible and avoid the deadly laser. However, this ability couldn't sustain invisibility for long, so Amada needed to seize the opportunity. He then used this invisibility to advance and dodge the laser shots. Jin realized he was only invisible to projectile weapons, so he fired missiles. But Amada quickly charged forward, continuously striking at Jin. He then combined his punches with the invisibility technique to deliver a decisive blow, ending this battle. Although Jin failed, he gained more information to prepare for future encounters. Upon returning, Mikono apologized for misunderstanding Amada. He then asked if Ainoha was the female student who died years ago, but the teachers had to clarify that Ainoha was still alive and had not passed away. A few days later, Andy was again digging a tunnel leading to the girls' changing room, but instead of finding the changing room, and he found a tunnel and an old book here. Sazan was selling pictures she had taken of her classmates. Mikono was interested in the pictures she took with Amada, but Amada unexpectedly bought a picture and hid it from everyone. Sazan then revealed it was a picture of Andy, and he also returned at this time, announcing that he had just found this book. Upon investigation, Ainoha suspected this was the rumored book that could grant its owner control over a forbidden Aquarian. When the group asked Andy how he found the book, he started to tell them but then hid it again. The two teachers then asked the president why she had returned. The president's return indicated she must have found something, but the president seemed unwilling to say. Andy, at night, sat reading the book to study it, but he was quite bad at literature, making it difficult to read. We then learned the reason Amada bought Annie's picture was because Kagura wasn't it. The next morning, Annie demonstrated a few things he had learned from the book, but no one understood Annie's meaning, so Mix came over to take a look. She read through the book, making everyone realize it was the Academy's ancient rulebook. We meet the enemy commander, Vazine, again. We now learn their purpose is not to invade Earth but to preserve their species. Their species had mysteriously lost its women. The women of this species all unexpectedly died for unknown reasons. That's why they abduct women on Earth. And only those who survive the teleportation process are strong enough to become queens of their species. Both Jin and the commander believed the most capable person was the pilot of the red robot they had repeatedly encountered. Therefore, Jin decided to personally come to Earth this time instead of remotely controlling the robot. Jin then made some adjustments before the battle began, and he was quite dejected about what he had just found. But Mix suggested they submit these rules to the school, so the school could reinforce its regulations. Because Mix was very disgusted by Jessica's clothing style. Jessica didn't believe her dressing style was eccentric, so she asked Amada what he thought. He immediately floated up, giving everyone their answer. Mikono planned to wear something shorter to impress Amada, but Jessica noticed, so Mikono reconsidered. Suddenly, the enemy attacked once again. Fudo, looking at Jin's armor, decided to send Amada with two girls, Jessica and Mikono, into battle. As soon as they entered battle and merged, Amada unleashed his infinite arm towards Jin, but he had foreseen this attack, firmly grabbed the arm, and used this connection to find the true faces of the three pilots. Kagura, forced to watch, was furious and demanded Jin not touch his woman. But Mikaz wanted Kagura to helplessly watch Jin take away his most precious thing. Jin then began to fire back at Amada's group, but his missiles didn't cause external damage. Instead, They inflicted direct damage on the pilots inside. The protective suits of all three began to tear, and fearing unforeseen consequences, all three had to unmerge to scatter and dodge. But Jessica began to feel something strange. She realized she could predict the incoming missiles' positions. Fudo explained that when skin directly touched Aquarian's power, their senses would heighten. Jessica thought this meant the less fabric she wore, the more sensitive she would become. So Jessica didn't hesitate to remove more fabric from her outfit. Mikono, not wanting to be outdone, also tore some of hers. And then the power of the two girls suddenly increased. So the commander ordered them to combine once more, but with Jessica as commander. The three then combined and charged straight towards Jin. He then tried to shoot back, but Jessica dodged all his bullets. She kept tearing more fabric off her body, feeling more and more clearly. Thanks to this, the three managed to get close and land punches on Jin, shattering his armor. But after the attack, all three were too exposed to look at each other. Mix didn't approve of this method, but this was the trade-off for absolute senses. Sazan was selling pictures she took of the three pilots tearing their clothes. Jessica secretly bought a picture of Amada and kept it hidden from everyone. A few days later, and he noticed his hole was constantly being filled in by someone. The president spoke with the commander about wanting Shrade to agree to stop fighting. Kayan also advised Shrade to use his abilities to support from the rear, but of course, Shrade wasn't the type to accept that easily. As for Annie and Amada, the two were still digging. Annie explained to Amada the meaning of digging for him. But suddenly, both were pushed back to the surface, and he realized Mix was the one who had been filling his hole all this time. He then started arguing with Mix, so Amada asked them both to help him out. Their argument was witnessed by Fudo. Fudo proposed to the president that they adjust Mix and Annie's emotions to help them reach a common understanding, and Fudo's suggested method was to have them both combine. Mikono would be the third person added. When it was time to execute, Mix and Annie quickly objected and resisted, not wanting to merge with each other. Both were then forced into the simulation machine, and Mikono quickly realized that convincing these two to merge was very difficult. Their resistance caused the machine to malfunction, so the simulation had to be stopped. Annie and Mix were then punished, and Annie couldn't understand why Mix hated boys so much, because if it weren't for her father, she wouldn't have been born. But she just told Annie to shut up. Amada then asked Mikono why Mix hated boys, and she had heard Jessica say that Mix's father was quite a terrible person, and her father was also the reason Mix hated holes so much. And he also overheard this conversation and felt more sympathetic towards Mix. The next morning, suddenly, three enemies appeared and attacked. These three were Jin's subordinates, and the commander realized Mikaz had deliberately provoked them into attacking on their own. Fudo deployed the trio from the previous simulation battle, but upon takeoff, Mix still refused to merge, wanting to fight alone. She quickly faced the consequences of her stubbornness, and he spoke up, admitting he was wrong for trying to convince her to stop filling the holes. But he also said that if she didn't fill the hole in her own heart, no matter how many other holes she filled, it would be useless. He then showed Mix how important she was by saying he wanted to merge with her, the first girl. But the enemy wouldn't let the three merge so easily and attacked Mix, forcing Annie to rush in and shield her. Fudo quickly brought Amada in to replace the unconscious Annie, and Mikono convinced Mix to continue merging to avoid wasting Annie's efforts. The three then merged again, and Mix was surprised to feel Annie's emotions still lingering within her. The three quickly combined, and Mix used her filling ability to plug all the enemies' gun barrels, causing their weapons to explode immediately. The enemies were defeated in a single move, and victory once again belonged to the Academy. But Andy and Mix then continued to argue about filling holes. But Amada thought at least the two of them were more connected than before, and Amada believed Mikono's ability was to help people connect with each other. She didn't think she had that ability, but rather that others already had a connection with each other. She then fell, and Amada managed to capture things. But Mikono's cat attacked Amada, making him fall into a hole again. Jin had now discovered the Academy of Human Pilots. Jin decided to enroll in the Academy, and no one knew his true identity. Jin took a look around and was quite surprised by the human girls. The girls constantly approached him, wanting to learn about Jin, but he deliberately left. However, the girls kept following him. Jin then wanted to explore, so Kayan decided to help him with this. Kayan took Jin to see the former dividing wall and asked if he saw anything. If not, to move his hair out of his face. But Jin claimed he could still see clearly, so it was fine. Jin was then led by Kayan to the tactical command room and also encountered Fudo there. He told Jin to feel free to look around. Amada then also stopped by and saw Kayan being quite strict with Jin. He claimed he was being very kind already, but Jin took the opportunity to leave and discovered the 3 aircraft used to merge into Aquarian. His report to the commander led to an order for Jin to steal a tank, or if that failed, to find a girl powerful enough to become their queen. Jin noticed many people around him starting to avoid him, but this only pleased Jin, as he could now investigate without drawing attention. Jin then saw Mix using her power to trap Annie in a pit. Passing by the stairs, he witnessed the teacher arguing with Donna, accidentally knocking off Annie's prosthetic arm. Jin concluded that all the women here were dangerous. He then hid in a nearby room, only to be surprised by Jessica, who caught him, because it was the girls' changing room. Yunoha spoke up for Jin, saying she used to get lost a lot too. Jin also explained that he genuinely got lost, so the girls let him go. Action sound. Annie and Amada wanted to get to know Jin, but he ignored them both and went to his bed for some privacy. And the next day during lunch break, Amada and Mikono sat next to Yunoha. She kept watching Jin, noticing how similar he was to herself when she first came to the school. Yunoha had garnered a lot of attention back then, but she was shy about interacting, so she gradually isolated herself from everyone. And slowly, she hoped to disappear, and not long after, this ability manifested. Now, Yunoha worried that Jin would end up like her. Kyan came to KN with news of something suspicious at school, something that had been happening for days. Kyan began to suspect that Jin was somehow connected to what Shred said. Jin, at this point, had gone to the library to find books explaining women. But of course, no book could explain women. Jin then met Yunoha again and was very intrigued by her invisibility power, because it could help Yunoha avoid everyone anytime. But Yunoha argued that isolating oneself was wrong and advised Jin to be more sociable. She then burst into tears and left. That night, Jin began investigating the girls at school and sent the information back to his commander. Jin believed that Earth women seemed to be the ones who had men wrapped around their fingers, and they had a very potent weapon: tears. The commander ordered Jin to find the strongest and most terrifying woman to bring back. So, he then joined up with Annie to dig pits, and he was delighted to have another comrade. The three then followed a pit, and he had dug to reach the girls' dormitory. Jin quickly found Yunoha's room and called her out to meet. He then climbed a tree to approach Yunoha's room, only to be suddenly attacked by Kyan. Because Kyan suspected Jin was a suspicious individual, Kyan fired, and Yunoha stepped in to protect Jin, so the bullet almost hit her. Suddenly, Jin awakened his power and blocked the bullet. Yunoha fainted from fright, while Fudo wanted to see what Jin would do next. The abductor commander had now met a girl being preserved on the ship. Surprisingly, Mecha's also arrived. Mecha's reminded them that the abductor planet was on the verge of extinction. After the female population suddenly died out, hoping to find a solution, they attacked Earth, trying to find a woman strong enough to survive in the abductor environment. The first one chosen was this girl named Alicia. She was the actress who played the goddess Sylvia in the movie Amata used to love watching. But Alicia had fallen into a deep sleep for some reason, and had shown no signs of waking up until now. Mecha's thought part of the reason was that Alicia had given birth to a child before being transported here. But Mecha decided to give up on Alicia, not believing she could be their true queen. Alicia was now nothing more than a doll to look at. He was about to destroy Alicia when the commander stopped him, saying Jin was trying to bring back a new queen, so Mecha reluctantly let it slide this time. But Mecha had other plans. He was trying to push Kagura to his limit to make him burst forth and remember the memories he had lost. Memories of the two gods, Apollo and Sylvia. Kagura then erupted, transforming into a beast hungry for love. He then lunged, bit Mikaze's neck, and ran off. The commander quickly heard news of a monster attacking his soldiers and had to deal with it. Mikaze had no intention of restoring their race from the beginning. What he wanted was the primordial battle armor sleeping in the Earth's core. Jin and Kyan were arrested. Jin was released with a warning not to trespass into the girls' dorm again. As for Kyan for pointing a gun at a fellow student, she would be detained for a while longer. Jin met Yunoha again, and she knew Jin liked Alicia very much. So, she made the doll look as much like Alicia as possible. Donna now demanded Jin be expelled, claiming he was an imposter. But the chairman and Fudo both wanted to keep Jin due to his abilities. Amata and Makono talked for a while about Jin and realized he really needed someone to talk to. They both also had things they wanted to ask each other but couldn't bring themselves to speak. Suddenly, Annie's group arrived, and Jessica asked for a sip of Amata's juice. But this indirect kiss forced Jessica to ask for a sip from Makono as well, to avoid criticism. Meanwhile, Kagura had retrieved his robot and quickly left. The commander ordered the warp gate closed to prevent Kagura from reaching Earth. And he now noticed Jin seemed quite close with Yunoha. He then advised Amata to confess to Makono soon, because even though love was forbidden now, once the war ended, it wouldn't matter anymore. So, he had to act before someone else took Makono. He was worried about Kagura, so he decided to practice right away. He invited Makono out for a chat. Kagura, unable to use the warp gate, was furious. He fired everywhere, then threatened the commander that if the gate wasn't open for him, he would destroy the place. Upon hearing that the residents had evacuated, the commander immediately deployed cannons and fired at Kagura. But it seemed Mikaze was also fueling Kagura's rage. Jessica wondered what she lacked compared to Makono that Amata didn't care for her. Amata found it a bit hard to speak, so he asked Makono to turn around. He then began to fly up, and was able to speak his heart. Meanwhile, Kagura suddenly collapsed. But as soon as the soldiers approached him, he suddenly surged up and awakened his power, claiming he was the reincarnation of the god Apollo, and Makono was his goddess Sylvia. Makono, seeing Kagura's reflection next to her on the water, suddenly grew worried. Mikaze then opened the gate, allowing Kagura to proceed to Earth. A few days later, Jin was caught by Sazan eating a hot dog. Seijin invited Jin to buy some photos, but she didn't want money. She wanted to take more pictures of Jin, because he was very popular lately due to his mysterious aura. Many girls then flocked to playfully interact with Jin, which made Yunoha feel relieved that Jin seemed to be more sociable, and he was frustrated that Amata still hadn't clearly spoken to Makono. So, and he decided to create another opportunity for Amata. Tomorrow was the school's founding anniversary, and he planned a party, inviting Amata and Makono to join. But Amata accidentally let it slip, so Jessica also came to join. Back in their room, and he invited Jin to help organize and participate in the sleepover. And he believed that Jin would one day combine with another girl, and the feeling of combining was very exciting. Even though Amata thought, and he could say, that despite never fully combining with the girl himself, Makono, and Jessica now passed through a tunnel, and he had dug and surprisingly found Yunoha there too. She wanted to join the sleepover with the group, but the three girls then stumbled upon Kyan and Shred in the middle of the path. So Kyan then went to check on Annie's party to see what they were organizing there. Amada still considered it a harmless fun party, nothing explicit. But Jessica looked around for any explicit materials. She surprisingly found a picture of Alicia on Amada's bed, so he admitted to being an Alicia fan. Yunoha also remembered that Jin liked Alicia, so she told Jin to project Alicia's image. Jin reluctantly brought it out for everyone to see, and at that moment, Annie came up with a new idea. To celebrate the school's anniversary, he would organize a movie screening on the big wall. They would show the movie about the two gods for the whole school to watch. Annie went around posting flyers, announcing that Shred would also perform there, so everyone could watch alone from afar, or sneak to a corner with someone they liked to watch together. One could say this was an opportunity for the whole school to have fun, and the chairman also allowed the students to enjoy the holiday. Jin now called his commander to plan an attack on the academy, but there was no response, leaving Jin wondering what had happened. Yunoha approached to call Jin, and Jin worried that Yunoha had heard his earlier words. Jin's aggressive approach scared Yunoha into running away, but Jin tried to hold her back, tearing Yunoha's doll. She cried and ran off. Jin knew he had messed things up. Makono now remembered that she and Amada connected because of this movie. If not for it, they probably wouldn't have this life. He then apologized for putting Makono in danger. She said everything was her own choice, and it was her destiny. Amada recalled his mother once saying everyone had wings within them to overcome destiny. And he also told Makono that his mother abandoned him when he was young, and his mother was Alicia. He believed his mother didn't like him, which was why she left him. But Makono said she also had been left behind by Kyan before. But she didn't accept being useless, so she believed everyone had someone who needed them somewhere, and no one was completely useless. Amada thanked her for her words. He then invited Makono to watch the movie in a private spot without anyone disturbing them. Jessica now saw Amada and Makono happy together, and was incredibly jealous. Jin now sewed up Yunoha's doll. He saw making up with Yunoha as a way to bring her to abduct her. This was seen by Mikasa. He then went to the commander, stating he didn't care about Kagura's business but was there only to inform the commander that Jin was also gradually getting drawn into love on Earth. Jin then returned the doll to Yunoha and apologized to her. Yunoha also apologized for panicking a bit. She then accepted that Jin had his own secrets, so she wouldn't try to find out what they were. At the same time, she invited Jin to watch the movie together. Jin agreed, then realized this was what human love felt like. But Mikasa now played a trick. Mikasa intentionally teleported Jin's communication device to Yunoha. She suddenly received a message from the commander, saying Jin needed to bring the necessary girl back soon before Kagura reached Earth, and destroyed everything. But she hid Jin's communication device. Everyone had settled into position to watch the movie with the whole school. Only Jessica was still alone. As the movie played, Amada took the opportunity to hold Makono's hand, then got too excited and flew up. Makono flew with him, but right then an alarm sounded and Kagura burst through the gate. Jin, realizing the dire situation, wanted to leave quickly. Amada and Makono then fell onto a tree. Jin had asked Yunoha to come with him to escape the chaos. Donna ordered all students to evacuate, while Yunoha now asked Jin if he was truly an abductor, because she had heard Jin's message. Jin was about to refute when Mix called for both of them to run this way, but Kagura quickly lunged and attacked Mix. The teachers then quickly evacuated all students. Only 20 people were still unaccounted for. Amada and the two girls were quickly deployed. Jessica put aside her jealousy to join the battle with them. The three quickly combined, and Kagura was thrilled to see Makono again. He unleashed a wave of energy to repel Amada. Immediately after, he lunged, forcing Amada to dodge and retaliate with an endless punch. But Kagura was able to deflect that blow. Kyoto announced that Kagura had also awakened powers similar to humans. That power was reversal. But Kagura's love had twisted, turning his emotions into hatred. Meanwhile, Jin grabbed Yunoha and decided to force her to the abductor planet. Jin activated an aircraft, making the teachers realize Jin was trying to steal a plane. And Kyan immediately knew Jin was a spy. Kyan decided to stop Jin. Amada was still trying to attack Kagura but was constantly thrown back by him. He realized Kagura was much stronger than before. The command center also detected a surge of energy flowing into Kagura through the gate. Kyoto demanded that the one assisting Kagura reveal themselves, and Mikasa quickly appeared. Yunoha now asked if all of Jin's feelings here were just an act. Jin didn't want to elaborate, so he flew the aircraft away. Kyan was quite angry that she was too late. Mikasa then cast a spell, causing most people to fall unconscious. Only the chairman remained safe. Mikasa was surprised that after 12,000 years, Fudo hadn't changed at all, and he was in an uglier form than before. Fudo, however, thought he was better off than Mikasa, clinging to one form for 12,000 years. Mikasa then got to the main point. Where was the golden wing armor? Amada's group was now completely defeated by Kagura. Yunoha pleaded with Jin to stop and help Amada's group, but Jin didn't listen and tried to take Yunoha through the gate. Kagura now left his robot and approached the Aquarian, opening the cockpit to grab Makono. Kagura was overjoyed and called Makono Sylvia. Amada then rushed in and used his power to snatch Makono from his grasp. He used reversal to nullify Amada's power. Kagura then approached, remembering Amada was the odorless one he met before. No, odor meant he didn't exist, so it wouldn't matter if he killed him. He wondered what would happen if he reversed the blood flow in Amada's heart. Donna now surged forward to attack Mikaz. Mikaz remembered Donna because he was the one who took his arm. Mikaz decided to leave this time. Kagura was about to kill Amada when he suddenly fell into a pit created by Annie and Mix. Mix almost died if Annie hadn't dug a hole in time to help her escape. But Kagura quickly returned, so Kayan and Shred flew into attack. The group then needed to find a way to close the gate. Suddenly, Jin brought Yunoha back. Jin had decided not to return to Abductor. He wanted to use his separating power to deal with the gate, and whether they believed him or not was up to them. Suddenly, Mikaz appeared to attack Jin. He claimed that the price for Jin's love would be very steep. He then choked Yunoha, forcing Jin to attack him. But Mikaz quickly attacked Jin's head once and disappeared. Jin believed it was just a psychic attack and had little effect, so he was fine. All 6 aircraft then combined once again. Amada's group would continue to deal with Kagura. Jin would do his best to close the gate, but the gate was restoring Kagura, so he continued to rise, creating a vortex and striking towards the 2 Aquarians. Jin tried to reach for the controls, and Yunoha helped him. Everyone then connected with Jin, and both Aquarians worked together to break the vortex. Shred would go ahead to hold Kagura, allowing Jin to finish what needed to be done. Jin was then given control of the robot and quickly transformed it into a cannon. Aiming at the gate, Shred now approached and slashed Kagura once. He tried to reverse the slash, but Jin and Yunoha together closed the gate, causing Kagura to lose energy and be completely cut down by Shred. Just as everyone thought this was a victory, Fudo had a shocked expression. The reason was that Jin's injury had now worsened significantly, causing Jin to collapse. Jin then took his last breath, and a funeral was soon held. But Mikaz spread propaganda to the Abductor people that Jin's death was a call for them to rise and fight. Because the human base was damaged after the battle, it couldn't win a full-scale war, and the Abductor commander now suspected that this race might have been destined to pay the price. Jessica now informed everyone that Yunoha was still locked in her room, invisible to the world again. Fudo then asked Mikono to find and persuade Yunoha to leave her room, because he feared Yunoha's power would go out of control, and instead of just disappearing, she might even erase herself completely. Mikono then went to Yunoha's room to bring her some food. Yunoha now regretted not going with Jin, which led to Jin losing his life. She also didn't want to attend the funeral because she didn't want to say goodbye to Jin one last time. But no one wanted this to happen. Mikono also didn't want both Jin and Yunoha to disappear, so she begged Yunoha not to be so sorrowful anymore. Yunoha then agreed to go with Mikono. Amada now realized his mother might be on the Abductor planet. On the way to burial, the students who unfortunately died in the recent battle, some decided to quit school, which infuriated Mix, who believed these people were abandoning their chosen status to think only of themselves. But Andy advised her to calm down, as how they chose was everyone's right. However, Andy would stay to be a moral support for those who chose to stay like him. After burying those who were lost, Fudo surprisingly told Andy to dig many other holes for him. He then ordered the students to bury themselves in them. He believed that if the battle dragged on, many more would be buried there. And for training, he wanted everyone to get used to the smell of earth. But everyone refused. Mikono thought everyone was grieving this loss, yet Fudo could utter such words. Fudo believed everyone should experience a temporary death to develop their abilities. Shred volunteered to go first. Since Shred had faced near-death experiences for a long time, it was not strange for him to experience it now. Everyone then chose a hole to crawl into. Mikono, however, still wouldn't accept this. But Fudo didn't force her to participate. But Amada did. Fudo just pushed Amada down. Those underground began to feel new sensations. First, they heard the sounds of creatures underground. Then came the sensation of being covered in insects on their bodies. Additionally, there was the feeling of their bodies gradually disintegrating into dust. Some couldn't bear it and immediately emerged. And Mikaz was now making Kagura experience similar sensations to the students. Those underground now tried to overcome their fear. For Mix, she thought this was Andy's hole, so she wouldn't be scared. And he also wasn't afraid of the hole he dug himself. But for Jessica, she worried that Amada would be heartbroken when he learned the truth that Mikono was Sylvia, and Sylvia would eventually return to Apollo, not him. Amada remembered being abandoned by his mother, and believed that if he were born again, he would be abandoned again. Yunoha also began to want to disappear completely from this life, making Mikono want to save Yunoha. The powers of the remaining people began to resonate with each other, and at this moment, Mikono awakened her own power. According to Fudo, her ability was connection. She had the ability to connect divided souls wandering between life and death. Yunoha now suddenly heard Jin's voice. Jin asked Yunoha and everyone not to give up on life. Everyone then felt a new sensation, a warm feeling, like a mother's embrace from long ago, and they realized that nothing happening was scary at all. The feeling of warmth would always have to come with pain and suffering, so they had to accept everything that happened. Everyone then experienced a rebirth from their pain. But just then, Kagura also suddenly emerged from underground. No one knew why he was there. Fudo had to take the chairman to a safe place. The students now had to let the girls retreat to the rear. Donna fired a shot at Kagura, only for him to reverse the attack back at her, and he had to create a series of holes to make him fall, allowing Mix to fill them. But Kagura still managed to escape. He then grabbed Mix and sniffed her, realizing she wasn't the one he was looking for. So he threw her back to Annie. The group now tried to get Mikono away. Kaien lunged and punched Kagura's arm, but he reversed the damage back at her. Amada flew in to stop him from chasing, but he also had his power reversed and fell. Kagura then suddenly got a severe headache. Shred created music with his own power, without instruments to control Kagura. He couldn't reverse the music, so he reversed the wind to stop Shred from playing. He then transformed into a wolf and ran off. Mikono's group now realized Kagura was hot on their heels. He then lunged and reversed the car's movement, making it drive backward and crash into the roadside. Kagura then got Mikono and took her away. Donna and Annie's group then searched from above in a helicopter. The others would search on the ground. Kyan, Amata, and Jessica then left the helicopter to begin their search. Mikono now woke up right next to Kagura. She gasped and almost fell, but Kagura caught her. He declared that she could only die by his hand. He then summoned Mikaz to take him back. Mikaz felt jealous of Kagura because he got what he wanted. Amata was now eager to find Mikono, but Jessica advised him not to worry too much, as Kagura wouldn't harm Mikono. Amata said Jessica had no way to be sure about what she said, so Jessica had to reveal that Kagura and Mikono were destined to be together. Kagura kept insulting Mikono, making her ask why he kept chasing her. He claimed he hated her and wanted to kill her, but she couldn't understand why he hated her. And now even Kagura couldn't find a reason to answer Mikono's question. Mikono then realized Kagura was acting against his own desires. At the same time, she noticed something familiar in Kagura's eyes. Kagura now told Mikono that they were the reincarnations of the two gods, Apollo and Sylvia. The world once had something called the Tree of Life, but due to the battle between the two gods and the Shadow Angel, the tree had withered. The two gods were then separated to re-nourish the Tree of Life, but Sylvia promised to wait for Apollo, no matter how long it took. Jessica believed Mikono was the goddess Sylvia because the scene Kyan showed them partly proved it, but Amata thought those two gods were just legends. Mikono also couldn't accept the truth and almost fell. Amata suddenly noticed a light from Mikono's power and quickly rushed over. Kagura managed to catch Mikono, but Amata had also arrived. He flew into the air, only to be reversed by Kagura and fall. But Amata realized he had controlled his power for a moment. Amata then chased Kagura and asked Jessica to contact Kyan. Donna's group's helicopter had now spotted Mikono. Meanwhile, Kagura and Amata fought. He tried to run to lure Kagura to chase him, but Kagura kept disabling his power to prevent him from flying. But Amata would try to stall until everyone could save Mikono. Immediately after, Kagura lunged and punched him. Being constantly hit made Amata want to fight back, but he couldn't fight Kagura one-on-one at all. Kagura claimed that no matter how many times he tried, he couldn't defeat him. Amata was sent flying by him and thought this might be the end for him. But the lesson of being buried underground now helped Amata surge forward. His power awakened to a new potential, and his wings grew larger. Kagura's power could no longer make him fall. He was then suddenly shot by Kyan. He reversed it, causing Kyan to drop his gun. Amata picked up the gun, and Kyan advised him to finish off Kagura to prevent him from harming everyone. But Mikono ran over and asked Amata to stop. Before both he and Kyan could understand, because cast a spell to take Kagura away. Amata didn't understand why she did that. Back at school, Mikono was confined in the dormitory. She herself now didn't understand why she saved Kagura. Yunoha unexpectedly came to talk to Mikono. She remembered Jin's words from underground and believed that as long as she didn't forget Jin, Jin would live forever in her heart. Because Mikono helped her realize that, she would always support Mikono. Annie and Amata noticed things seemed to have settled down. But Amata now believed even more that Mikono was Sylvia, as Jessica had said. Mikono also now noticed her cat was quite strange, as it didn't care for anyone else but her. Yunoha tried to touch it, and it reacted quite aggressively. With Amata, it was even more aggressive. Amata also realized that himself, and he now thought that perhaps fate had not intended Amata to be with Mikono, because the cat didn't like him, and he also had Mikono stolen by Kagura. However, and he was just joking, but Amata felt Annie's words were somewhat true and suspected that Mikono and Kagura's fate might have been set 12,000 years ago. But Annie still advised Amata to try to win over the cat. Who knows, maybe fate could change unexpectedly. Amata then went shopping, wondering if Mikono's cat would like what he bought. Jessica noticed Amata and didn't know how to face him. She then asked Mix what to do when there was something she wanted to say but couldn't. Mix suggested it was best to just say everything as frankly as possible. Mix only gave that one piece of advice before running off to find Andy. The commander noticed the energy sources on the abductor were constantly being damaged. Although this energy couldn't last forever, its rapid damage and explosion was still too abnormal. The commander began to think that Jin's death was the beginning of abductor's demise. Fudo now proposed organizing practice battles between the Aquarians. The pairs would be pre-selected by Fudo. First was Kyan with Seijin, and the third person was Kyan's old teammate, Malloy. The opposing team would be Amata, Jessica, and Mikono. Both sides were then sent into battle with Kyan and Amata as the two commanders this time. Donna wanted them to treat each other as enemies and attack with everything they had. Kyan also wanted to see how capable Amata was of protecting his sister, so he wouldn't hold back. Kyan had a long-range advantage, so Amata had to hide behind buildings to avoid bullets. But Malloy, in his first deployment, showed everyone his power. Malloy had the ability to break down the structure of any object, making it turn into dust with just a touch. Amata was forced to constantly run because he had no way to approach Kyan. On top of that, the two girls in his group started arguing, forcing Amata to step in and stop them. He then hid in a lower area, but Kyan still drilled through the mountain to pursue him. When he tried to retaliate with his endless arm, the Aquarian's leg suddenly rusted. causing him to lose balance. This rust came from Sazan's corrosive ability. Amada had to use his endless arm again to grab onto another area and flee. Kyan thought Amada couldn't win because fate had destined him to lose. But Amada was tired of listening to fate, so he decided to charge out and fight back. Many of Kyan's powers had evolved, allowing him to see a moment into the future. Kyan's power was too overwhelming, leaving Amada with no way to fight back. But he didn't want to let destiny work against him. And Jessica also decided to ignore the destiny that had been set 12,000 years ago. She decided to confess to Amada right then. Jessica then appeared before Amada and decided to tell him that she loved him very much. But Kyan's group now fired a barrage of missiles at where Amada was hiding. He had to dodge the missiles, so he didn't hear Jessica's words. Both Amada and Makono wanted Jessica to say it again. So she blushed and repeated that she loved Amada very much. The Aquarian's energy then suddenly flared up violently. Everyone realized the Aquarian's energy could still go out of control from Jessica's unrequited love. The rust on the Aquarian then disappeared, and the Aquarian also moved on its own without needing control. The Aquarian punched, and the punch unexpectedly disappeared into a spatial portal. That punch allowed Amada's group to see past images of the previous lives of the successors to Apollo and Sylvia. The battle involved Fudo and Mecha, and also the primordial Aquarian that Mecha was searching for. Apollo then parted ways with Sylvia to pilot the Aquarian Genesis, aiming to mend the entire world with this very infinite punch. Amada then made the punch strike directly at Kyan. The punch then caused violent tremors, and when the image reappeared, the entire island was completely destroyed. The good news was that the pilots were safe. Kyan now realized that the punch had transcended space and time, making even he unable to predict it. Jessica now felt guilty for putting the whole group in danger. She feared she would make the Aquarian go out of control again and harm everyone. But Amada now realized that Kagura, or rather Apollo, had been given the personality of a beast from his previous life, and he had always pursued Sylvia very intensely. It seemed Kagura and Makono were destined by fate, and could he defeat that fate? Back at the academy, Jessica wanted Amada to forget her words before the Aquarian went out of control. Amada didn't want to forget because those were Jessica's feelings, but he just wanted to say that he couldn't accept her feelings right now. Jessica tried to leave, but Amada held her back to talk. But Makono misunderstood Amada, so she proactively left to not interfere with the two of them. Her cat also lunged and scratched Amada's face, making things even harder to salvage. And Fudo realized now was the time to dig that thing up. Back in the room, Jessica wanted to explain to Makono that the morning's incident was just a misunderstanding. But Mix told them not to think about romance right now because they still needed strength to fight. Malloy now gave Amada advice that there was nothing wrong with romance, because everyone has the instinct to leave something behind for the next generation. Before dying in battle, the next day, the group surprisingly received an urgent meeting notification. Fudo had called everyone and announced that he needed them to dig something up, and all information surrounding it was top secret. Everything they needed to know was in this handbook. And remember, bananas on this mission would not be snacks, but their sustenance. No one understood what the chairman meant until they boarded the plane and saw a crate of bananas already there. These were old bananas, not popular now, so they were quite hard to eat. Malloy wanted to know where they were going, but Kyan said the plane's destination was already set, so they wouldn't know where they were headed. But Andy suspected that Fudo wanted them to unearth the primordial Aquarian. Yet, the group was now taken to a lake. The teacher said Fudo had ordered them to enjoy themselves freely here and wait for the next command. Mix then understood why the handbook advised bringing swimsuits. The group then rested here to relax. Shred and Kyan went fishing on a boat. Shred wanted Kyan to just enjoy himself because there was nothing they could do but wait. And he was now watching the girls with Amada. He started shouting, then got hit in the head by a ball. Mix then took Annie back to the boat to apply medicine. And Annie took this opportunity to hold Mix's hand because he had something private to say. Seijin wondered why Annie and Mix were taking so long, so Amada told her to let them have their privacy. Makono and Jessica were now in a corner confiding in each other. Annie was now about to say that he wanted to fill the hole in his heart, but he stammered, so he only said he wanted to fill her hole. These suggestive words made Mix immediately slap Annie's face. Makono now said she was jealous of Jessica because she dared to express her feelings. But Jessica was jealous of Makono because no matter how popular she was with boys, in the end, they would still choose someone like Makono. Just then, a spatial gate unexpectedly appeared. An enemy suddenly emerged from it, and Kyan quickly called for people to start the aircraft. Mix went to call Andy, but Andy was now despondent and digging a hole to hide in, because he worried Mix would hate him after this incident. Kyan, and to others now quickly transformed to fight. The group, feeling cold, had to crawl into the hole, and he dug to escape the cold. Kyan, Amada, and Seijin were now quite difficult to fight, because there was no protective gear. The cold kept seeping in. The entire aquarium then froze. Andy kept digging without stopping, so Fudo let Andy continue digging. He quickly hit something, and then a series of water streams from below suddenly erupted to the surface. Amada's group now surprisingly found water flooding into the cockpit, and the others also crawled in there. The aquarium temporarily separated. Amada had it recombined and took command. The teacher realized Fudo wanted both males and females to fight together in the same cockpit, to support and complement each other. The reason for needing bananas was that bananas were the fruit of paradise. They were the fruit representing the sun because when ripe, bananas turned towards the sun. The aquarium then unleashed its infinite punch, but this time, it was many punches at once. The enemy was quickly obliterated after just one move. Mika's now noticed a part of the primordial armor had appeared. Back at the academy, Jessica decided to change her style of dress. She also told Mikono that even though Amada rejected her, she would still harbor feelings for Amada, even if he didn't love her back. A few days later, Kyoto surprisingly left a letter saying he had left to find the primordial Aquarian, and he was still sulking and digging a pile of holes in the schoolyard. Mix filled them up endlessly. Everyone wondered why Annie was so frustrated, but Mix didn't dare to say why. There was a social event coming up, and the girls were constantly getting invited. Mikono received a letter, but it was from her father. She and her father didn't have the best relationship, but he was still her dad. So, the letter checking in wasn't unusual. As for Amada, he only remembered his mother. His father was a blank. He couldn't make sense of the recent events either. Mikono felt she needed to explain to Amada why she protected Kagura, but Amada didn't want to pressure her. Mikono still felt unable to bring everyone together, so she ran off. She then opened the letter, but immediately handed it to KN, as it was for him. She regretted reading it, because her father always saw her as useless. Her father believed if she hindered Kayan, he would remove her from the academy. She then met Mix, who told Mikono why and he had been avoiding everyone for days. Mix asked about Mikono's relationship with her father, but Mikono rarely spoke with him. He often got angry, and she knew he'd vent his fury on her if she said anything he disliked. Meanwhile, Jessica was training despite the late hour. When the instructor found Jessica, she explained that she'd been distracted lately and wanted to train to keep her combat skills sharp. The abductor commander realized Mikaz didn't care about their race's future, so he decided to go to the battlefield himself next time. He then met Alicia and swore he would find a queen for their race, and also find Alicia's son. Kai now knew Mikono had read her father's letter. Mikono felt she really should return home so as not to hinder everyone, but Kain told her she often hid her feelings because she was afraid of bothering others. Kain used to think she was truly timid and useless, but ever since meeting Amada and hearing his thoughts on Mikono, Kain realized she might have been wrong. Mikono had truly changed. Just then, an enemy alert blared. Command realized the enemy leader had entered the fray. Donna then dispatched Amada, Kain, and another girl to the field. Annie, still looking completely dejected, couldn't be sent out. Mikono and Jessica both volunteered, but without Fudo, everyone struggled to decide. So Donna had Amada, Malloy, and Jessica combine. Kain and Mix would provide support when needed. Everyone noticed Jessica seemed a little too excited. She also asked to command this time. While Aquarian fought Themis, Kain would handle the commanders to subordinates. Jessica unleashed a powerful shot at the commander, but he absorbed the attack with his wings and fired it back at the academy's pilots. The entire academy was affected. Jessica changed tactics and fired a barrage of missiles, but the commander absorbed the explosion's power and flung it back at the team. Malloy urged Jessica to calm down and engage in close combat instead of long-range attacks. She closed in on the commander and used Malloy's shattering ability to destroy his robot, but he deployed a shield to block the shattering power. He then struck down Jessica's Aquarian, causing the robot to separate. Malloy was out, so someone needed to take his place. Mikono stepped in to replace Malloy. Donna sent Jessica to support from outside and had siblings Mikono and Kain combined with Amada. Jessica was too reckless today, so she had to fall back. The commander then connected to the academy's comms frequency, announcing himself as Izumo and stating he had something to say. He only wanted a powerful woman from Earth, not a global war. The president considered a diplomatic solution instead of using force, but she didn't know how Fudo would choose to handle it. Jessica volunteered to sacrifice herself for everyone. Izumo, seeing her strong will, decided to take her, but Mix wanted her to think carefully before deciding. Amada then combined and charged to attack Izumo. Suddenly, Izumo sensed the person he was looking for was here. Meanwhile, Amada was shocked to see an image of his mother appear in the sky. Izumo knew Mikaz was behind this trick, but the fact that the other side stopped proved his suspicions were correct. But Mix tried to stop Jessica, only to be captured by the enemy herself. Izumo also retreated, vowing to meet Amada again next time. Jessica made another mistake, leaving her filled with regret, and he then blamed Amada for Mix's capture. But Amada had also tried to save Jessica at the time. Hearing that, Jessica, filled with regret, ran off, and he once again burrowed underground to hide. Ainoha and Mikono tried to bring any food, but he refused to touch it. Nearly a week passed, and there was still no news of Mix. Jessica was still avoiding everyone. Jessica believed Amada saving her, even though he didn't choose her, would only cause her more pain. But just then, Mikaz came to Jessica. Mikaz revealed he was also one of the Unchosen, just like her, and he promised to help her separate Amada and Mikono so she could be with Amada freely, without anyone getting in their way. Mikaz then left, leaving a mark on Jessica's forehead. Mikono then decided to go find Fudo and bring him back. She believed she was the only one with powers not meant for fighting, and she also had something she wanted to tell Amada, but she would wait until she returned to say it. It was revealed that Mikono's cat didn't hate Amada without reason. It was just jealous because Amada received love from Mikono. She desperately wanted to say it, but she didn't have the courage yet. Suddenly, a gate unexpectedly opened, but with no enemies, and he believed it was an opportunity to rescue Mix. But everyone worried it might be a trap. They then unexpectedly received a message from Fudo. It contained a donut with many swords. After examining it, the president realized Fudo was telling them to enter the gate, so a team was dispatched to leave. But Fred knocked out Kyan so he could take his place on the mission. He wanted to hear the melody of the other world to complete his own masterpiece. And he decided he wouldn't combine with any other girl, saving his first combination for Mix. So Amada then combined with 2 others and ventured deep into the gate. The gate on the abductor's side also unexpectedly opened. But Izumo saw nothing emerge and thought the gate was malfunctioning. In reality, Amada's group had used Ainoha's cloaking ability to enter safely. While searching for a landing spot, Ainoha kept the aircraft cloaked for half a day. And within that half day, they had to find Mix. The group then drove and entered the abductor city. As they entered, the group noticed Alicia was very well known here, and Amada was certain his mother had come to this planet. The group was then noticed by some people, and the locals found it strange to see women here. Unaware of the situation, Jessica thought these people were perverts and attacked. Fred then realized this place was populated only by men, with no women at all. And the tower in the city center, according to information Jin left, was the command tower. The group then advanced to the tower, and Annie created a hole for them to enter. But an intrusion alarm soon blared, and the group quickly captured a soldier to help with navigation. The group was soon surrounded. So Amada and Annie took the soldier ahead while the others stayed to hold off the enemy. Amada and Annie temporarily hid in a room. Annie noticed the soldier was wounded and provided first aid. The two then went with the soldier to the main elevator. But the soldier betrayed them, destroying the control panel to stop them from going further. And he created a hole for Amada to escape ahead, while he stayed behind to buy time. Amada was then discovered by Izumo. Amada then heard a familiar sound, quickly ran to investigate, and unexpectedly found the room where his mother was being held. He wondered why his mother was there when Izumo and his soldiers suddenly arrived. Amada recognized Izumo as the one who attacked before. Izumo ordered his soldiers out so he could explain the situation to Amada. Jessica and Ainoha returned to the aircrafts and continued to conceal them. The two then suddenly realized some things about this planet. Meanwhile, Fred realized this world was very much like him. Both were awaiting impending ruin. Meanwhile, Makono was searching an entire town for Fudo, but she only found him when she reached the docks. He revealed he had been following her throughout her journey in this town, but she was only just realizing it now. He was a Buddhist deity representing immovability, and he had lived for 12,000 years. Fudo then asked if she was ready to hear the whole truth. Izumo told Amada that 14 years ago, all the women on this planet suddenly died, but he urged Amada not to attack hastily, but to listen, because the truth was even harsher. Meanwhile, and he used his power to escape and search for Mix. Fudo explained some philosophies to Makono, but essentially he revealed that 12,000 years ago, something existed that kept this world stable. That was the mythical Aquarian, and he was still trying to escape when the entire tower was suddenly attacked by the SWITH group. He quickly realized there was a problem with the two girls, which was why he had to get them into the robot early, and he then leaped onto the Aquarian to escape. The group then arrived to pick up Amada. He now knew the truth about the curse here. Izumo was about to tell him another truth about his father, but Fred's group arrived to pick up Amada, so he had to leave. The group then intended to temporarily return before Jessica and Ainoha couldn't endure it anymore. But the soldier, who had been with Annie, suddenly used his power, sealing all engine holes on the Aquarian and in the sky. Annie was stunned, realizing the soldier who was with him was Mix. Amada told Annie about the curse here, that anyone who survived the curse here would be transformed into a male. Annie was furious that Mix had been afflicted by the curse. He began losing control of his powers, creating a black hole. But Fred used this black hole, combined with his bow and arrow, to fire a shot that pierced the city's shield and activated a space gate. Then he entrusted the necessary task to Amada. Amada then led the group away, while Mika's noticed the pieces were finally falling into place. The situation upon their return was dire. Amada informed the group about the curse on Abductor. Fred could no longer fight. Makono still hadn't brought Fudo back, but Annie was determined to return to Abductor to save Mix once more. Fred then asked Kn to foresee if he could complete his life's masterpiece before he died. Jessica then met Mikaz again, and he wanted her to remember her promise to him. Though she couldn't recall any promise, Mikaz believed she would remember soon. Meanwhile, and he met Amada again, and he realized the hole Mix had filled could not be dug open again, and he wondered if bringing Mix back would help her return to normal. Amada suddenly dreamed of himself merging with Kagura, and Kagura used his body to harm Makono. Fudo told Makono about ancient times. That long ago, all things lived in glorious light, but the angels of that era saw humans as their prey. In the ensuing battle, an angel named Apollo fell in love with a human, and Apollo chose to betray his kind to join humanity. Apollo left a weapon for humanity. That was the Aquarian. Amada then unexpectedly boarded an aircraft in the middle of the night to search for Makono. Mikaz had high hopes for Amada, as he would help him find the mythical Aquarian. Kyan and Jessica then had to follow to find Amada. Kyan used his power to locate Amada, but he still only saw a vision of Makono and Kagura's wedding. Amada then returned to the city where he first met Makono. Jessica and Kyan also arrived there. Kyan explained that the city had been deactivated after that first battle, and he never expected it to leave the entire city so desolate. Amada then returned home, only to find his room changed, with many pictures of his mother hanging there. Kagura then stepped out onto the street, wondering why Mikaz had brought him here. He then suddenly saw a picture of Amada and Alicia there. This image slowly awakened his suppressed memories. Amada then discovered Jessica had come to the old movie theater to find him. She couldn't believe Amada was still only thinking of Makono. Jessica was about to ask him something when a robot attacked, cutting him off. This robot was sent by Mecha to prevent the story from going wrong. He then forced Amata and Jessica to run directly to his desired location. The two were then attacked by the robot and fell from the bridge. Jessica used her power to protect Amata, but she herself was kicked upwards. She told Amata to run, but he still wanted to save her at all cost. So Jessica kissed Amata, causing him to fly up. She was then hit by the robot, while Kyan only just arrived to help Amata. Soon after, Fred and Sazan also arrived. Fred disregarded his own condition and still wanted to continue fighting. Meanwhile, Amata confronted Kagura once more. The two then realized they were each other's other half. Amata and Kagura were both the same person. When Alicia left, Amata tried to follow his mother, but by some power, he was split into two. Kagura then looked at Amata with disdain and ran after Alicia. And now Kagura saw that Amata hadn't changed at all after all these years. When he was needed, he couldn't do anything, constantly letting destiny slip through his fingers. Amata argued that even though Kagura chased after their mother, he still couldn't save her. Kagura revealed that when he was teleported, he met Mecha, who erased his memories. But now he no longer cared about his mother. He only pursued Mikono. The two then clashed. Meanwhile, Fudo realized the mythical Aquarian had awakened. The dry lake then suddenly exploded, and the mythical Aquarian soared up, retracting the two arms that had connected the worlds for 12,000 years. Mikono then reunited with Kagura and Amata, but neither had any intention of stopping their fight. Fudo had now returned to the command room, and Donna couldn't understand why. In this situation, two idiots were still fighting. Kagura repeatedly pinned Amata against a wall, daring him to fly if he was confident he could overcome fate. Meanwhile, just as Jessica seemed to be dying, Mecha reappeared. He declared she couldn't die until she fulfilled her promise to him. Amata was now determined to overcome Kagura's destiny. Had he spoken his true feelings? About how he loved Mikono, challenging Kagura to see if his feelings could overcome his fate. Amata was then blown into the chasm, but he took flight and soared towards Kagura. Fred had reached his limit, but he had no intention of stopping. He would keep fighting. Mikono then fell from a great height, so Amata rushed to catch her. Meanwhile, Fred still requested command to let him continue fighting, but the president quickly had to send Ainoha in to replace him. Power from the mythical Aquarian was now continuously erupting. Fudo believed Amata's current battle would determine the mythical Aquarian's fate. He then asked everyone if they knew what the gap between their clasped hands was. It was nothing. A zero. But this zero was the boundary between yin and yang, between good and evil. And now, only when Kagura and Amata's memories were fully awakened would the mythical Aquarian's infinite power be unleashed. As the dust slowly settled, its light exposed the cloaked Aquarian. The purple robot quickly knocked away KN's group, and then made off with the mythical Aquarian. Kagura then rushed forward, kicked Amata away, then took Mikono onto his robot and fled through the gate. Fred pleaded with the president to let him go one more time. He argued that the day she brought him here, she must have known there would come a day she'd hear Fred's final symphony. He then flew into the gate with Amata, but Jessica then also flew after them to help them combine. Fred then used his shield to block the purple robot's attack, pushing it back to create an opening for a powerful slash. Fred completely destroyed the purple robot, but he was also exhausted and couldn't maintain his combined form anymore. Izumo then noticed Kagura carried a rather powerful girl, possibly the woman he sought. So he ordered his soldiers to prepare to take her from Kagura. Earth was now continuously suffering natural disasters due to the loss of balance that the mythical Aquarian always maintained. But the mythical Aquarian wouldn't operate without its chosen pilot. Amata's group was now continuously encountering problems within the space gate. Fred suggested combining again, even though his body no longer had the strength. But he still wanted to hear the sounds from the other world through the Aquarian. Fudo had the remaining pilots examine something called the Book of Genesis. This was a story from 24,000 years ago. Fred then heard the memories of this space and projected them for Amata and Jessica to hear. 24,000 years ago, humanity's greatest enemy was the Shadow Angels. They caused untold destruction and took countless human lives. Apollo was then the leader of the Shadow Angels. Apollo fell in love with a human and then created the mythical Aquarian to repel the Shadow Angels. Batoma, an angel betrothed to Apollo, was enraged by Apollo's actions. Then another character, Apollo's hound, appeared. It had a one-sided love for Apollo's wife. It prayed that, if it were reborn, it and its beloved would have a different fate. The hound's wish and Tama's angelic hatred left deep imprints. And so, back to 12,000 years ago, the Shadow Angels attacked again. But humanity remembered nothing about fighting them, until they unearthed the mythical Aquarian. But this mythical Aquarian had a new master. Its master was the previous incarnation of Kagura and Amata. This Apollo was not Apollo's reincarnation, but the reincarnation of the hound. And the one it loved was reincarnated as a girl named Shinvai. The two met on the battlefield. But a cruel twist occurred. The Shadow Angel Toma was also reborn as Mecha. He planned to destroy the humanity Apollo had once protected. Humanity then had to destroy the World Tree, the very thing that sustained life for the entire world, just to completely eradicate the Shadow Angels. The loss of the World Tree forced Apollo to sacrifice himself, and the mythical Aquarian to maintain Earth's balance. And so, back to the present. The loss of the Tree of Life caused Earth to lose its balance, and gradually split into two fundamental states. One side was Earth, and the other was Abductor. Though separated, the two worlds remained bound together. Fred then found the ending for his melody. Fudo then continued his tale. That Apollo this time was reincarnated as the son of Senator Alicia. But Mikaz had arrived in this era earlier and split Apollo's soul in two. But ironically, Apollo now had two halves while Shinvai only had one. That was Mikono. Jessica lost her motivation, believing that no matter how hard she tried, Mikono would always win. Kyoto claimed the next part of the story needed to be written by them, as the book of Genesis at this point was still blank pages. Fred then used his own blood to complete his music and guided Amata and Jessica through the gate. Fred then fired an arrow, opening the gate for Amata and Jessica, while he himself fell back into the gate. Kyan and the president then found Fred's music appearing in the book and understood what had happened. Mikaz quickly found Jessica and then possessed her body. He then rushed to protect Kagura and Mikono and advised Kagura to summon the mythical Aquarian here. Kagura tried it, and the mythical Aquarian unexpectedly appeared. All three quickly entered to begin controlling it. The remaining people then decided to help Amata by sending all remaining pilots to the other side. But they didn't know how to open the gate, and Annie believed he could do it. The president had no choice but to trust Annie and borrow his power. Kagura used his Solar Wings ability to wipe out Izumo's fleet. Izumo used his own power to block the attack and fired it back at Kagura. But Kagura used reverse ability to deflect the blow back. Mix then appeared, wanting to help Izumo. Meanwhile, the three boys were on their way. All three quickly combined and transformed into cannon mode. Annie was determined to reach Mix, no matter how she had changed. He would open a hole in Mix's mech and dive in. Annie then opened an artificial gate and entered with KN and Malloy. Mix paused then, having heard Annie's call, but she was quickly knocked away by Kagura. Mikono stopped him, telling him to focus only on Izumo. Amata then suddenly heard a call, awoke, and quickly flew off. Izumo still appeared superior to Kagura, but Mix continuously stepped forward to block Kagura's reverse attacks, forcing him to deal with Mix first. But just then, Annie's group made it to the side. Kyan, upon reuniting with Mikono, asked what had happened. Jessica, or rather Mikaz, informed them that Amata was currently missing and Fred had died before leaving behind his life's symphony. Amata then arrived at the source of the mysterious call. He was suddenly pulled inside and reunited with his mother. Alicia also unexpectedly opened her eyes. Kyoto wanted to see if the mythical Aquarian would divide the two worlds once more or unite them. And he continuously created holes in Mix's robot, forcing her to constantly fill them. And he vowed to keep doing it until it worked. And Mix now began to recognize the familiarity of this action. Meanwhile, Amata reprimanded his mother for abandoning him, only to call him here now. Alicia knew she had wronged him, but she wanted to explain why she abandoned him. And it was connected to his father. That person was Izumo. Years ago, Izumo had traveled to Earth, hoping to find someone to save his planet. And Alicia and Izumo met then. Izumo's machine had then stopped working and crashed to Earth. Alicia was the one who found and saved him. He quickly realized Alicia was the one who could shoulder the burden of saving their entire world. But he soon fell in love with Alicia and chose to return without her. He knew he couldn't judge Kagura, as he himself had once betrayed his homeland. But at that time, he couldn't get past Mikaz. Izumo had to return to Earth once more, and Alicia, hearing of it, decided to help him. She knew that saying she feared bringing him here would put him in danger was just an excuse. Because the truth was, she had abandoned Amata to follow the man she loved. Amata admitted he used to hate her, but not anymore. He only hated himself for not having the courage to follow her, as Kagura had done. Just then, Izumo began gathering all the energy on Abductor to create a cannon. He fired a shot aimed at the mythical Aquarian, but his first shot was merely a warning, demanding Kagura hand over Mikono. But Mikaz made Kagura aim and fire at where Alicia was held. The entire holding area collapsed, sending Izumo rushing back in a panic. But he left an opening, allowing Kagura to unleash an infinite punch directly into the control room. Izumo then fell, but he managed to fire a retaliatory shot, causing the mythical Aquarian to separate. Amata quickly went to reunite with his father. Upon seeing Amata again, Izumo, having heard Amata just reunited with his mother, asked him to take him to Alicia. He didn't expect Amata to forgive him. After all, he was the one who separated mother and son. Izumo then noticed the surrounding nature had begun to revive. He realized his long search for someone to repopulate their race was meaningless. They only needed to rebuild the ecosystem for humanity to thrive again. But Alicia then appeared, embracing Izumo's soul and saying his life hadn't been meaningless at all, because he had left Amata in this world. Alicia hoped Amata would be the bridge between both worlds. Amata then believed Kagura was the enemy who always stole his most precious things. Therefore, he would make him pay. Amata then found Kagura and charged after him. He caught up to him, then transformed into Aquarian with only its upper half, sending Kagura flying. He told Kagura that Izumo was both their father. Kagura was knocked to the ground, but immediately flew back up, trying to transform to match Amata. Abductor was then suddenly pulled through a gate, causing it to appear right next to Earth. Annie's group was still trying to bring Mix back, and he knew creating holes wasn't working, so he latched onto Mix's robot and crossed over himself. As he tried to get inside, Mix blocked him, preventing Annie from entering. But he repeated the confession he had messed up last time. Annie then created a small black hole to pull Mix close and embraced her. Mix's memories then began to return. She remembered Andy, but Mix now lacked the courage to face him. But Annie would still love her, no matter what she had become. Annie was about to combine with Mix when I Know How was suddenly transported there. Both of them were returned to the command room. Amata then argued that Kagura had both their father and mother by his side. He had everything Amata always wanted, yet he threw it all away. Kagura claimed his parents never raised him, he had to live with Mikaz. And living with Mikaz was more painful and lonely than anything he had ever endured. But upon meeting Mikono, he realized she was the only one he needed. She would always accept him, no matter what. Kagura declared Amada was nothing but weak. It was because of that weakness that Shinvai was separated 12,000 years ago. And now, that weakness had caused Alicia to leave, and soon, Mikono would follow. The president then had to run to find Fudo. She believed the two worlds were about to collide, creating a new one, and Mikaz would become the god of this new world. Yet Fudo was still here, doing nothing. He then suddenly vanished. Amada, meanwhile, argued that Mikono was entirely different from the Shinvai of the past. His Mikono was not destined for Kagura, because he would overcome that destiny and reclaim her. Mikono then woke up and tried to stop Amada and Kagura, only to suddenly encounter Mikaz. He wanted to combine with her. At the same time, he told her he deeply resented Apollo for trampling on his feelings. He had once supported Apollo in a previous life, thinking that person was Apollo. But he never realized that Apollo was merely Apollo's hound, and the real Apollo secretly trampled on the love of Shinvai, and now he would have his revenge. He then forced Mikono to combine with Shinvai, but when they combined, this was only the lower half, and Amada or Kagura would be the rest. Mikaz then began draining the power from this world, but Amada then reunited with his friends, and Malloy told him to combine with Kayan and Ainoha. He had just combined and tried to grab Mikaz with his infinite arm, but Mikaz evaded him, then manipulated Kagura, rendering him unconscious. He then rushed to combine with Kagura and took command himself. Mikaz's transformed state then created the ancient Aquarian. Amada unleashed his infinite punch at him, but he blocked it, showing him what true infinity was. He then created other infinite arms and seized Amada. He then created two more arms from thin air, locking Amada's limbs. Kagura tried to reach Mikono, but he was continuously pulled away from Mikono, and then fell straight down. Kagura encountered Jessica. She begged Kagura to kill her to stop Mikaz, because if Mikono was lost, Amada would be utterly devastated. Mikaz suddenly malfunctioned, allowing Amada's group to escape. Kagura let Jessica live, saying she wasn't worth dying for someone as weak as Amada. Mikaz also decided he no longer needed Jessica, because holding Mikono was enough. He released Kagura and Jessica outside. He then created a gate that pulled both worlds together. He then made the wings glow, undoing Amada's combination. Kayan and Ainoha were sent back to base. Meanwhile, the two worlds were evaporating from the heat generated by Mikaz. Annie and Mix then boarded an aircraft to assist Amada. Just then, Fred's aircraft returned, but Fred was still dead. Jessica's aircraft also returned, along with Malloy. That made it 6 aircrafts, but the president ordered Malloy to return and let her go instead. She also requested Kayan and Ainoha to come along. Kayan, returning to Fred's aircraft, heard some words Fred had left behind. Both Aquarians then combined and charged towards Mikaz, but Mikaz created many arms to strike back. The president used her teleportation ability to help Kayan dodge the attack. Meanwhile, Annie and Mix created holes to help Amada overcome the obstacles. Kayan unleashed his full power, firing a shot at Mikaz, but he was unharmed, so Amada charged forward to continue the assault. But Mikaz created many hands to grasp the two planets, pulling them closer faster. He also drained power from both planets to rapidly grow larger. Meanwhile, Mikono then unexpectedly encountered images of Apollo along with Tama's past self. But Mikaz intervened, and Fudo also appeared. He revealed this place was the boundary between the love and hatred Mikaz, or rather Toma, held for Apollo. Mikono had to overcome her fear and seek the truth here. Mikaz then knocked Annie and Mix away from Amada, but Kagura and Jessica then had to step in, combining with Amada. Mikono then understood and went to confront Mikaz. She admitted she had stolen the one Mikaz loved most, but she was willing to accept Mikaz's revenge, as long as he spared the world. Mikono then told Amada to stand back and let her connect everything herself, but Amada then understood his past regrets. He then, along with Kagura and Jessica, unleashed a colossal infinite punch. Both punches then shattered Mikaz's arms, but he still fired to beams that shattered Amada's combined form. As everyone's words reached him, his wings flared once more. Amada then used his upper half to combine with the wings and flew forward. Amada's words reached Mikono, helping her awaken that she couldn't connect everything by herself. Kagura then acknowledged Amada and used his own power to help Amada ascend. He then entered the ancient Aquarian and reached Mikono. Mikaz was blasted out of the ancient Aquarian by their love. The two worlds then returned to normal and were connected. Mikaz still harbored plans for revenge, but he then entered Fudo's body, or rather, the ancient god Apollo himself. Mikaz still greatly resented Apollo, but he would accept Mikaz within his body so they could witness the new era together. The entire academy then began repairs. The teacher and Professor Donna then decided to be together. Mix slowly returned to normal, but it would take a bit longer. Jessica was still worried about Amada and Mikono. That afternoon, Mikono's cat unexpectedly returned, and so did Mikono and Amada. Amada then carried Mikono out and returned with everyone, and that's where the story ends.